This is NVHA 260004, our 467th interview overall. It's April the 14th, 2026, and we're in Fairfax, Virginia at the home of Bob Fischer. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing us to come and do this interview.
My pleasure.
All right, now let's start with the basics. What is your full name?
Robert Louis Fischer.
Now, the Robert or the Louis, are those family names?
Louis is named after my grandfather,
Okay.
middle name.
All right.
Robert is my dad's name.
Good combination.
Fischer's the generational name. They came first generation.
Yeah.
I'm a third generation German out of Germany.
Okay. So was the name different?
No, Fischer was the traditional. The Jewish and English are Fischer.
Okay. All right. And what year were you born? What year were you born?
1930
1930.
in Dubuque, Iowa.
Okay. And what's your highest rank in the military?
Colonel 06.
Colonel Fischer?
Yeah.
You were born in Dubuque, Iowa? Were you born in a hospital or in?
Finley Hospital.
Okay.
Yep. Finley Hospital. Yep.
During that time, people were still being born at home.
My
A little bit of both.
My sisters were born on the dining room table. 3 of them. Dr. McGuire. Never forget that.
Did your mother know they did that?
I learned that some years later.
Holy smokes.
But for some reason they sent me to the hospital for the first pass.
Tell me about your mother. What was her name?
Her name was Alice Mary Cash. She was from a tobacco farming family out of Fancy Farm, Kentucky, Paducah,
Yeah.
Mayfield,
Yeah.
Fancy Farm. Her father owned 1,400 acres of the prime tobacco at the time,
Right.
and there were 9 children, 6 boys, 3 girls, and the boys worked the fields, and they eventually got their portion of the 1,400 acres broken up. My mother went to work in Chicago as a switchboard operator at a hospital, and she was a great dancer, as my father liked to say. He would sit and watch her win dancing contests with her boyfriend at the time, and she taught me the jitterbug. She taught me all the great dancing. So when I was in 8th grade, the mothers used to say to her, "Can I dance with your son?" Anyway, that was my mother, and my father was born in Jasper, Indiana, in extreme poverty. His father, at age 49, went next door to help a friend out who had diphtheria and died from it. And that was a tragedy for the rest of his life. He had the tragedy of growing up beyond poor, where they had to fish in the Wabash River to get the turtle and fish to live off of, with his brother, who was a great fisherman. Then he wound up in Chicago. He did very well in the brickwork until he became a foreman eventually, and was wearing the equivalent of $500 suits, and had a beautiful Chrysler, and was a foreman on a big brick company. When he met my mother, and they decided that Dubuque, Iowa was a beautiful little town where my dad had worked on the railroad at one time. And he said, if he ever gets married, he said, I want to move back to Dubuque, Iowa. And he was a brick contractor, home builder, and that's what I grew up in, laying brick, till I was 17. And I said, I'm tired of one on top of two, one on top of two. I was looking for the door, so I went to Maryknoll Seminary. When I was just turning 18, I went to Maryknoll Seminary. That lasted 6 months, and then behind that I decided I got an opportunity to go through 160 reserve openings to the Naval Academy. So that's how I wound up in Annapolis, and graduated from there in '55 into the Marine Corps.
Wow. What was your mother like, personality-wise?
She was the most happy-go-lucky organizer. She could, and she and my dad could raise the most beautiful gardens, having grown up on the land. her produce and her fruits and that. She was selling to the local grocer. He was buying her stuff to sell in his store. It was that good.
Yeah.
But we were in the Depression, 1930, and they had a quarter acre behind our lovely brick home that my dad managed to salvage just enough money to build this home of the 69,000 he lost. But he did get this home built, and they had a quarter acre of land, 6 foot of top rich Iowa topsoil, and they raised everything, including chicken coop right behind the garage. So we were self-sufficient pretty much like that, and if that wasn't enough, if you went out the road right in front of our house, it was called Peru Road, went out to the country 2 miles, and the Schulte family was a farm family, and that's where we got our beef, and my mother could trade all her wares,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
fruit and vegetable, for
For the beef.
for beef, which we like. We got our share of beef from them. And
Yeah.
Cat.
You say your father's name was Robert?
my dad's name is Robert.
Okay. And did you tell me that he'd been in World War One?
He was World War I. He was inducted in Dubuque, Iowa, in the last year of the war. He managed to go over, and he was at Bellow Woods, Meuse Argonne, and that's it. And he never talked about the war. He would never say a word about it. I guess it was pretty brutal at that too, but he was very quiet. But with my kid brother came along 17 years later. My mother was 13 years younger than my father. She had a change of life baby called my kid brother Ken. My pride and joy of my father. My father never talked to me except on the job. Get the damn brick up there. Get up that. Get this. Get that unloaded. Get this. I wound up working my butt off for him. Except basketball season, I was allowed to play basketball because there was snow coming down and stuff. And I actually was on an all-state basketball team. We went to all-state. My small little military school of 300 of us took on the 4,000-man school of Davenport, Iowa, in the finals. And I was a fast-breaking forward. And then I stayed on for another year and a half to go to the local college, and I played semi-pro basketball.
Oh, okay.
So I played for 3 basketball teams: the Naval Reserve, intramural during the noon breaks,
Yeah.
and then I played also semi-pro. So by the time I got to Annapolis, me and my big mouth opened my mouth to say that I played semi-pro. You're not going to play any sport at the Naval Academy. Doesn't matter, you played semi-pro. Shut up.
Yeah, you're going.
Yeah.
And I didn't shut up enough.
Yeah.
That's
back
all right.
Those days accounted for that.
So I graduated 55. 56 of us became Marine officers. And I was lucky enough in the summer we used to chase all the girls at Virginia Beach. We'd go down there Friday night, or they had the locals, girls' schools and all that good stuff. But I was on this blind date right up, not far from here, in Rock Creek Park. On one Sunday, my best friend, Pete Eller, who was quite a hero in Vietnam, written up extensively for what he did. But he and his girlfriend, Dee, said, "We'd like you to meet this Australian girl. She's traveling the world with her friend Audrey. And they were in Europe a year, now they're coming back here. And she's the secretary to the military attaché of Australia. But I'd like her to meet you on Sunday for a picnic." "Oh, that sounds good to me." It was too good. That accent just wiped me out. She's up here in Arlington. She died in 1990 at age 57.
What was her name?
Gwyneth. Gwyneth.
Okay.
The Welsh, Gwyneth. Yeah, she died of smoking.
Wow.
Heavy smoker. Beautiful. Absolutely. I have pictures on my bedroom wall of her. She's just gorgeous.
What was beautiful about her?
Not just her personal beauty with the Tahitian red hair, but her personality charmed. I couldn't get her away from the senior officers when I first got commissioned and we got married, we wound up in Hawaii in the 4th Marines. And the majors and above had been to Guadalcanal, had been to Australia. So who's mobbing my wife, my Aussie? And there's my company commander's wife, pissed off as can be. They're furious. Here's this beautiful Aussie being overwhelmed by all these officers that had been in Australia, major and above. So she was just had this lovely, charming, gorgeous accent, and everybody that knew her loved her, because if I'd go to some base on TDY or something, where's Gwenny? Where's Gwenny?
Wow.
Yeah, that was my life.
Yeah, how long were you married?
35 years.
35 years.
Yeah, she died here in 1990. We moved in on Braddock Road, just down here on Braddock Road. On the other side of Ox Road is George Mason Forest. And we found a home in there, and she lived 8 years. But heavy smoker.
Yeah.
And it got her, age 56, 57. Wow. Yeah, I lost it real.
Yeah, my Sue was 63 when she died. We were married about 34 years.
It's a tough loss, isn't it?
Oh, I tell you.
I mean, it just kills you.
You can't explain it to anybody that hadn't gone through it.
No.
You really can't.
It's hard to explain how nice you really had life. I agree.
Yeah, you talked about a couple of sisters that were born on the kitchen table. What? Tell me about your siblings.
Well, my next sister was a year younger, Darlene. There's a couple of artist paintings in here. She was nationally ranked artist in America. The number 2 sister, Elizabeth, was actually sang at La Scala and was at the Pope Pius Institute for 2 years. And she was the lead mezzo-soprano at Lyric Opera in Chicago until she met her restaurateur husband, and that took care of that for a while. And then the youngest sister married a doctor in California. All 3 sisters are gone now, saying, "Stay there, Bob. Just be patient. Don't push it." Then my kid brother came along. 17 years later. My father being 50 and my mother being only 33, change of life was, I wanted to say, Pop, you didn't realize that you could still produce. Well, he was the pride and joy of our family. Cute little guy. And I never grew up with him.
Do you resent that? The fact that he seemed to get all the love that...
I don't resent it. I understood it. What my father suffered in it. His father dying, extreme poverty, losing all his $69,000 in the stock market crash, and the day he proposed to my mother, and then the World War I that he had survived. He never sat down and talked to me about anything except get that lumber cleaned, get the nails out of it for the job the next day. But he was one of the most charitable, giving men that I'd ever known. He'd go to Mass twice on Sunday, one for his brother Bill, one Mass for his brother Bill. But, for example, I still remember him saying, like, we had a little Ford pickup, we had a 39 Ford, you remember those little wire wheels and all?
Yeah.
We had that little bitty, and he said, load it up, go get the sand, mortar, and get her loaded up. We got a job Saturday. Normally he would not work on Saturdays, but in this kind of work he did work on Saturdays. I didn't realize how charitable, how big a heart. So we're going over to this man. As part of our church, Nativity Church, he, for some reason, saw the home of this man about just a half mile from us with the outside chimney brick chimney was coming away from the wall, and the bricks had already cracked up there, and his bedroom's right here. And so Pop says, okay, we're going to need, at that time you had 2.5 bricks, 2.5 bricks by 2.5, you know.
Yeah.
That was your, to go load that many up for
Your
20 foot.
Flue box?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we put a concrete pad down. So go down and get the brick for it. So I'd go down and get the molo, sand and gravel for the mortar mix, bags of mortar mix. That was my job, to run around. I was 12 years old driving a pickup truck, a Ford pickup truck, sitting on two pillows, and the local cops watching me go by. 12 years old, they knew I was driving for my dad, even in those days. So I would haul that stuff over, and he would build this poor guy in a wheelchair, who he somehow came to know through the church, or somehow he got to know that this fellow was in a very dangerous situation. And without even consulting the guy, we would just show up. My dad said, come on, Jim, we're going to put you outside now. In his wheelchair, we'd sit him outside and said, you can watch us do this. And 8 hours later, we had a brick chimney.
Wow. Wow.
He did a lot of charity work that way for people that couldn't afford very much. And so I got to know that side pretty much. And my mother had the Pope's storeroom. She had a fabulous garden with my dad that grew 6 foot of topsoil, that black top soil in Iowa. They grew the most beautiful strawberries and beefsteak tomatoes and sweet corn. Our garden was a treasure, and I used to have to hand spade the damn thing. It was a 1/4 acre, and I had to come home in the spring with it, with one of the shovels, and I had to shovel spade. And I'm looking across the fence. We had a wire fence between the next neighbor, McDermott, and Noonan, and there's Joe Noonan's got a mule pulling a plow. Joe, can you bring him over here? I'm the mule. It took me a week or so to dig that garden up, ready for planting. But boy, we had the most beautiful fruit and vegetables, and that's how I grew up under that particular world. And then when I was 17, I got a vocation to go to seminary. That didn't work very well either. But when I was at the seminary, there was a priest that came from the local college in Dubuque who was wound up at Maryknoll, Father Greg Keegan. And he was a little all-American basketball player. When we got to seminary, there were 13 of us in Maryknoll Seminary in Point Pleasant, New Jersey. That's where it was located. And it was in a little old Navy training base we had 3 Quonset huts and one bigger brick building on this little old former Navy base, and that's where we had the seminary. So it gets funny at the seminary because Maryknoll are the Marines of the Catholic Church, if you will.
Oh yeah.
Rough guys, beat up old pickups, Levi's, and that. So here we got all these East Coast guys from Boston, New York, New Jersey. Guess who the seminarians are? Them. And there's 3 or 4 of us from the Midwest. Well, it comes time to show us how you're going to be a missionary in the real world out there. I said, okay, today we're going to kill a chicken. We're going to show you how you kill a chicken. Father Bremner, or whatever his name was, he said, does anyone know how to kill a chicken here? Yeah, me. He said, well, how do you do it? I said, I wring its neck. You do? I said, who taught you that? I said, my dad. They said, well, come up and demonstrate. So I take the chicken and I wind him up, and there goes the chicken, and I got the head. Yeah. And they disowned me. All these East Coast guys. Oh, the killer, the murder, the killer. And Father Father Mac had to say to him, no, that's how you're going to do it. That's what you're going to learn how to do. And if that's not good enough, take this axe and give it this. So that was my earliest days.
Never got
that's
it.
great.
I came back and I was playing semi-pro basketball in those days. I played with guys that had played for the Celtics, Minneapolis. They'd played pro basketball, and I fit right in because I was a fast breaking forward, and I played on 3 different basketball teams before it was my turn to go to prep school for the Naval Academy, which I did go to. In Minneapolis, you had to do 27 weekend meetings at this Northwest Prep School, wear your uniform and go out and work on the flight lines Saturday and Sunday. That was your qualifier to come in through the Navy, back door to the Naval Academy, and you had to pass the exam. Well, it all worked out. That's how I got into Annapolis in those days. 56 of us graduated in the Marine Corps. I met the beautiful Aussie girl. She was engaged, by the way, when I met her.
Oh.
To a guy in Australia, of all things. But if you knew Australia in those days, Mummy had already picked out who the husbands were going to be. It was Mummy's choice. And she told me, she said, Bubby, when I left on the Iransi the night the ship left, I'm watching my girlfriends out there dancing, having fun, and I took that ring and put it off, and I've never worn it since. And it took my father to tell me how much I might have really loved this gal, because I went home on Christmas vacation and all. Normally I'll go out to the Melody Mill with the former girlfriends that I had, everybody dancing out there. I never went anywhere, I just moping. He said, you really like that girl? Yep. Called her up. We got married that April at the Naval Academy Chapel. She had taken the ring off way before that. And we had 4 beautiful daughters, the ones that are here, and we lived right over here on Braddock Road for 8 years that she lived. Died of cancer. Couldn't stop the Salem cigarettes.
Tell me about your daughters, their names and a little
Kim,
something about them.
We had 4 Ks. The first one was named driving over to the hospital to one of the appointments in Hawaii. I got lucky and got orders to Hawaii, my first tour at Kaneohe Bay. But we had to go to the civilian hospital where Obama was actually born, the Kapiolani Hospital in downtown Honolulu somewhere. So we're driving over and I'm looking at this big sign. It says Kimberly Clark advertising. You know, I said, that's a neat name, isn't it? I said, if it's a boy, it's going to be a Mike.
Yeah.
But I said, how do you like that name? She said, well, it's a very pretty name.
Oh, yeah.
So we had Kimberly. The next one comes, she's married, she's born in La Jolla at the Jonas Salk Hospital there. Right. And she's Kerrie, Kerrie. Okay, third one comes Christine. That's the one who was just here.
Right.
Christine was originally with a C, Christine, Child of God. Mm-hmm. And she becomes Christy, and then Kathy, the 4th one, came, and I said, at Fort Benning, she's born at the hospital at Fort Benning. I said, can you take her back and see if there's not a boy back there? And that's how I wound up with this lovely family I have.
Sound like you're pretty proud of them.
Oh, they're beautiful girls. And my granddaughters, I have two beautiful granddaughters, and then 2 little great-granddaughters. Right now. One grandson. One grandson, yeah.
Well, you got your boy.
The boy is in there. Yeah, he's doing very well. He's 29 years old and doing very well in the artificial intelligence world. Yeah, so that's basically what I have right here now. And
so you were born in Dubuque.
yes.
And how long did you live there?
I lived there till I was 17 years old, and I went away to Maryknoll Seminary.
Okay.
Then I came back for a year and a half, where I went to the local college and played for 3 basketball teams, basically. And then I was gonna join the Marine Corps in the spring of 1950. I was in the Naval Reserve, which we played all our ball games on reserve night, and you know, we never ever had a damn official meeting anywhere. The first baseman was the camp commander. We played all our ball games, basketball, softball, on those nights. I was the pitcher with those big mitts like that.
Oh, yeah.
And we had one of the best basketball teams in the town also at the time. So that was my life when I got back for a year and a half, until I decided I just wanted to leave town. I didn't want to grow up in a small town like Dubuque. And I said, well, I went in to tell my boss, commander of the reserve, Redmond Riley. He was a PT skipper for Buckley in World War II, and had been part of the group that took MacArthur to Australia. And he was a really neat guy. He was our first baseman in our softball team. So I went in to tell him I'm going to be leaving to join the Marine Corps in April of 1950. Could you imagine if I had never gone in to say anything to him that I was leaving the reserve? I'd have been into Korea 2.5 months later when the war, nobody knew that war was going to start. I'd have been one, and my buddy who was going with me, he went. He came back with a leg shot to living blazes. He was badly wounded, Bob Jack went out. But I sat down, listened to Redmond, and he said, no. he said, I don't want you to take that route. He said, I want to send you up to Minneapolis to the Northwest Prep School, where you can go for 7 months and they'll prep you to get in the Naval Academy. What? Yeah, he said, there's a prep school called Northwest Prep. And he said, you're a natural. You're going into your 2nd year of college. It's perfect timing. He said, they have a guy, Dr. Roddy, who's a genius in prepping you for the academies. He said, you're a shoo-in to go to Annapolis if you want it. I said, wow. So I picked him up on that, and that's how I wound up in Annapolis, and that's how I wound up Marine Corps.
Yeah, and then after Annapolis, where did you go?
Well, I got, like I said, I met this beautiful Aussie that I wanted to marry that spring, but if I was going to go to Okinawa, she was going to go home, and I probably would have never, ever married her. She would have gone back to Australia, and that would have been it. So for some reason, I don't know why, I used to go to my plebes house here in Arlington, and there was a guy across the street who had to be a Marine with the short haircut he had, or he was Army.
Right.
But when I'd come out, I'd stay with my plebe on the weekend, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night I'd stay with my plebe at his plebe's house, and he was right just adjacent across the street, and I saw him raking leaves, and this was about in the late fall of 55, going into 56, and he said, how's it going? I said, well, it's going pretty good, but except I got a problem. He said, I said, I've met this really amazing girl. I said, I'm afraid I'm going to have to lose her if I go to Okinawa. The next thing I know, we're looking at the orders in March, Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii, 4th Marine Regiment, 3rd Battalion. That son of a gun, when he was a 2-star general years later, I went to one of his talks, and I tried to thank him, and he said, I didn't do that. The hell you didn't. You saved me a marriage to a magnificent girl.
But not officially.
No, nothing official about it. And that's how it began. We had a little girl, Kim, in Hawaii, and then we came back from there, and that's how my career went until I got on the St. Paul. My 3rd tour was, I got orders to the St. Paul as a Marine captain, brand new Marine captain. You consider that's unbelievable set of orders. So I must have done extremely well under Colonel Hull in my first infantry years in Hawaii, because he had to have really great tickets, and I must have had good tickets. Next thing I know, in January 1961, I'm heading for Japan with a wife and 2 little girls, where they would live in Yokosuka, in Yokohama, and my ship is in Yokosuka, just like Gary talks about his. So I joined the St. Paul as captain of Marines, but my admiral liked Southeast Asia, so I would spend the best part of 61 and 62 in Southeast Asia, in all those ports, all the way from Taiwan Straits weren't as hot as they are today, but they were still a little antsy, but because Chiang Kai-shek had just moved there in 49, he'd kicked out, 49-50. So I wind up on the St. Paul, and my Admiral Griffin preferred to stay from the Philippines, Borneo, Saigon, Thailand, and basically whatever ports we went, Southeast Asia, almost 18 months out there. And that's when I wound up finding the books from the Malaya Jungle School. When we were in Malaya, we had pulled into the port off of Kuala Lumpur, Port Swettenham, and because it was a capital city, and because the Malaya emergency had just ended in 1960, and we were there in 61, it was an area of interest to our admiral, still an area of interest, even though they had driven out the communist terrorists into Burma in those days. Well, while I was there, the 2 times we went in, I was able to get their book, The Conduct of Anti-Terrorist Operations in Malaya, Anti-Guerrilla Operations in Southeast Asia. These were the only Bibles at the time on counter-guerrilla warfare, and I had them. And I brought them back to America. I was the first books of its kind that are formal books.
Okay, now did you write those manuals? Or?
No. These came from Malaya.
Okay.
This is the Gurkha school. This is out of the Gurkha school.
Okay.
Where the Gurkhas were in the Malaya Jungle School. It was renowned by the British. They trained the Brits, the New Zealanders, and Brits in jungle warfare at this school. All I could do is get these. I didn't have time to go to Johor Bahru to go to their school, but I knew the Brits from the 2 times I went in. They said, you ought to take these with you. So I produced the very first anti-guerrilla operation manuals, 1961.
Okay.
And I brought these back. Hopefully, I was starting to get interested in guerrilla warfare and guerrilla operations, even in those days, because you could see what was coming into Vietnam. In fact, in 1962, you could see I started. General Giap and Mao Zedong had written their books. You could buy these in Taipei and Hong Kong on the bookshelves. This is a classic today. People are all reading People's War, People's Army. That's the classic on guerrilla warfare. No book finer. I taught these 2 books only at the Naval War College when I was the adjunct professor on counter-guerrilla warfare course at the academy. Those are the only 2 books I used. If you read those books and understood them, which none of our Marines, none of our military had read when we went to Vietnam. Nobody knew 1 word about what was in those books.
Right.
I was fortunate at the time to wind up getting orders to the 7th Fleet flagship, Captain of Marines. And I thought, boy, this is really something. Well, little did I know how much that tour was going to help me in my future in counter-guerrilla warfare. It was awesome. I wound up leaving my family in Nigishi Heights, Yokohama, Japan, where they lived with the military families. Right? We had a real nice little house there and the whole bit, but I was only home 4 days of a month. That was our average. Our admiral believed in staying in Southeast. What he meant by Southeast Asia, you had the communist terrorists raising hell in the Philippines, the revolutionaries trying to overthrow the Marcos family. And then you come across, Borneo had its own thing going on with the Brit commandos going in there. So Borneo had some hilarious stories to tell, but I won't go into those. What the Catholic priest told me about what he had to put up with. And anyway, so we go Borneo, we go into South Vietnam. We can take the ship up the Long Tao and Soi Rap rivers. If you hit the sandbar just right and pivoted it went. So we wound up taking the ship up into South Vietnam at the time, and we went all the way over to Thailand and Malaya. So that was our Southeast Asia, including Borneo. While in Malaya, I was able to go, I couldn't go to the school at Johor Bahru. That was down 100 and some miles south of Kuala Lumpur. But I ran into these British officers where I was staying at the BOQ there. I ran into these British officers, and they started telling me about the jungle school, and we were talking in general. And they said, well, how would you like some of our manuals? I said, oh, hell, are you kidding?
Yeah.
So that's how I wind up being the very first American military guy to bring these manuals out of Malaya as publications. And then I think I have it laid open over there somewhere. Do I have it laid? I could show you the syllabus. Let me have that guerrilla warfare book up on top of the printer. Let me just show you what I have.
Oh,
See, this is how authentic the village was I built at Camp Lejeune. I'll give you a copy of this.
So,
This is how authentic.
oh, so you built this camp at Camp Lejeune for
Yeah.
training purposes?
Yeah, let me show you earlier. I'll build up to that for you. Just a minute. Let me build up here. So I go to Benning and I go to jump school.
See.
okay, you have to get the pictures and then you can talk about it.
Okay.
That's as close as I can get.
That's coming off the St. Paul. I wanted to go to jump school. I wound up going to career infantry and the whole bit. That's my jump school.
Okay, got it.
All right.
They busted our butts.
Yeah.
They did a hell of a job.
How'd you like jumping out of airplanes?
Scary. Yeah, on my seventh jump, my chute didn't open at Fort Bragg, and I said, "That's enough.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah, I can see
that's
that.
that's
Yeah, we do
enough.
it for most folks.
That's enough jumping for me." What is it I wanted to show? This is my counter-guerrilla school staff. The next few pages.
Okay.
You want to get a,
See there now.
I said I decided to write this all up about starting the guerrilla warfare school, but it was very authentic, as you can see it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
I had
hold
a-
it right there.
My booby trap trail was actually put in True Magazine by Malcolm Brown.
I've seen this.
You've seen it.
I have seen this.
I had that. True Magazine published my booby trap trail.
Ah.
Yep.
I have seen.
Malcolm Brown came in personally to do that trail. I had something like 30 different explosive devices on that trail. Scared the crap. We had these simulator explosives. Scared the crap out of the commandant.
Oh, how bad?
He'd walk up to one of these things and it would explode.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. You got it?
Yeah. But,
And our villages were authentic because my wife decorated.
Yeah.
They decorated the
we
inside.
got that a while ago, I think.
Yeah.
Now, this is what's really important. What I wanted you to have a picture of. This is the Malaya Jungle School syllabus that I brought and implemented at Camp Lejeune. That is the syllabus of the Malaya Jungle School.
Okay, where are you at?
Here.
Wait a minute. I gotta get me a focus.
And that was the finest that was the finest guerrilla warfare school in the world. And I copied it lock, stock, and barrel and implemented it at Camp Lejeune after I led a 500-man guerrilla force that totally decimated a 2,500-man brigade on the 5th day of a 10-day exercise.
I don't know how much of this is gonna come through, but
I was not well liked in those days. My boss would hide me out. You're not supposed to beat a 2,500-man brigade with 500 guerrillas, but we did. And it was to prove a point. We weren't ready for guerrilla warfare. I was trying to tell the Marine Corps that, but you couldn't tell one Marine colonel that we were going to go to Vietnam. They didn't believe it.
Yeah.
I was 61.
Yeah,
They
we
would
were
not believe it. I'm a working party of one trying to educate. and this doesn't get implemented until after, this school doesn't get implemented until after we held an exercise at Camp Pickett, Virginia called Grassroots 64. When I came back from Southeast Asia and my Asian tour on the ship, went to Benning for a year, and then I come in thinking I'm going to Camp Lejeune. I think I'm going to go aboard ship and become a BLT down off Panama or Cuba or something like that. No, you're going to go to Camp Pickett with a 500-man guerrilla force, and you're going to take on 2,500 Marines coming in, 2 battalions and a brigade staff. You're going to take them on in a big guerrilla exercise. Okay, well, they put us up there 3 weeks early. You know what I did for 3 weeks? I volunteered my young Marines to pick corn and to harvest crops. We had an 80 square mile objective area, okay?
Yeah.
And inside that objective area were pieces and parcels were farmland where they were raising corn, and it was harvest time. So I go to talk to these farmers. Who do I get on my side? Just like General Jop, People's War, People's Army. I got the people all supporting me until when the brigade shows up with its 2,500 men coming in on trucks from Camp Lejeune and in helicopters, but here they come. We got these 6-foot we got these 6-foot snakes hanging down off the highway, greeting them as they come in. These were the, what was that? The nastiest one we had. We had 16 varieties of snakes on demonstration, but we hung these big long black. What's the black one called?
Moccasins?
Water moccasins.
Water
Yeah,
moccasins.
we had the water moccasins, and we hung them by comm wire just about 4 feet above where the trucks would have troops in.
Yeah.
4 feet above us, this snake. Welcome to Blackstone, Virginia. And the farmers boarded up their trucks and drove us all over that exercise area at night so we could be positioned for different ambushes. We had the people in the palm of our hand, people to people, People's War, People's Army.
Yeah.
I was the only guy who had read this book, and this book, when I came back from Southeast Asia off the ship. and I couldn't get any interest in the Marine Corps at all in counter-guerrilla training. So when I go to Benning, we're studying the Pentomic Division, and we're studying everything World War III that was coming. It was Russian tanks with 10-foot tall Russians coming across Europe, and we're plotting nuclear CEPs all over the damn place. And that's all we did at Benning. They had special forces in Vietnam at the time, but working with the Montagnards. We never had one word on what was going to happen, even though my desk mate was a captain named Jerry Devlin, a great guy from Boston. And Jerry's sitting at our two-man table, it's scattered out with papers all over it. His papers. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm writing a book." He said, "You got to be my spotter. So if they happen to call on me, let me know." He's writing the famous book called Paratrooper. Mm-hmm. And Jerry is a Mustang captain who had been in the Berlin situation the whole bit. So I'm covering for him. But one time I don't cover for him. They call his name, and I give him the wrong answer. And the prof says, "What world are you in?" I got him in trouble.
Oops.
Anyway, Jerry goes from Benning, gets orders to Vietnam, of all things, small world, and gets the shit shot out of him at a place just where I had been, down in Van Kep, in about my fourth or fifth month in Vietnam. I saw where Jerry's Ranger company had taken on a regiment, damn near regimental size, and he had his whole stomach shot out. He got the top Army medal, Distinguished Service Cross, for his heroism. But it retired him, and I would hear him later. He was the guy they brought on TV to be the expert on parachute operations and that. He was on for years. He advised he advised the TV company, Paratrooper, where they had that on. So that was quite an honor to know Jerry.
Sure.
And that was my earliest experience. So I come out of Fort Benning, finish the school there, and I go into Camp Lejeune thinking I'm going to get aboard ship with my brand new rifle company I'm going to get, and I'm going to go somewhere. No, you're going to go to Camp Pickett, Virginia, and be a guerrilla leader. How small is that from? Wait a minute. I bring this back in '61,
Yeah.
and I'm going to go through. And now you're going to put me in a guerrilla exercise. And they heard all about my background, my reputation with the Force Recon guys. The XO of Force Recon says, "Bob, we want you to train our guerrillas out of this." So I spent a month at Camp Lejeune down in the swamp before we went to Pickett, training them in guerrilla warfare. I did my job too well. We decimated a 2,500-man brigade in 5 days, and the commandant had to come down and terminate the exercise. Now, mind you, Grassroots 64 was a top drawer Marine Corps. General Krulak, aide to Kennedy, General Green, General Holcomb, top Marines, all in support of this guerrilla warfare training at Camp Pickett. Well, I've tried to point out to them, I said, you have 2 battalions coming in here under a brigade commander, General Bowker. They haven't had 1 day of counter-guerrilla training. They have no clue what they're coming into. Right over the heads. Missed it completely. So the guerrillas, we decimated them in 5 days. And as we're marching back ourselves, we're marching back to get the airplane to go back to Lejeune. Guess who gives us one of the biggest hands of all these Marines getting ready to be trucked back or in line along the runway there? They gave us a hand.
There you go. Yeah.
So my reputation had preceded me badly, and my boss when I got back, Lejeune says, "You can't win, Bob. You're not supposed to win. You can't beat the brigade, but you did." You know, they left their helicopters totally unguarded the first night.
Oh my gosh.
They left their trucks totally, completely unguarded, which is typical of what the Marines did in our old traditional training. To go out the field, you just go to the field and you go out and go to the field, and then you play. You
play war game.
You play war games from one objective to the next objective. Well, there was no objectives. You're fighting guerrillas this time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the next thing, the commandant has me debrief the brigade commander and all. Well, I was a marked man. My boss sent me out of town to Fort Bragg to the Special Forces schools before I came back. But I'll never forget this one full colonel I'm back at my boss's house for Christmas party. And this bull colonel who had been in World War II and Korea, Dave Lowndes, Colonel Dave Lowndes, he had been the battalion commander just before I got to Lejeune, so I only knew him by reputation. But he takes me aside as a bird colonel at Tom's party. He says, "I want to talk to you." He says, "When are you going to take that Guerilla jockstrap off?" Because I had a pretty good reputation as a field officer and all that good stuff. "When are you going to take that jockstrap off?" And I said, "Sir, we don't realize, though, we're going to be fighting in that place in a very short time." And I said, "If I'm the only guy that's coming back trying to tell you this, then I'm going to keep trying to emphasize we are going to fight a guerrilla war next. We're not going to fight another Korea. We're not going to fight pillboxes on the beachheads. We're going to fight a guerrilla war, sir." Dave Lowndes won the Navy Cross. And guess what he commanded? The Marine Corps base. Remember the big Dong Ha?
Yeah.
He commanded Dong Ha. Got the Navy Cross.
So.
And so I didn't go back, and he lived not far from me when he retired. I was almost going to go down and knock on his door. I said, "Remember me?"
Now, the overall purpose of the guerrilla school, was it to teach guys how to fight guerrilla warfare or to counter it, or was it
Both.
a mixture of both?
We both. We taught both sides. We put on demonstrations of how the guerrillas could use collapsing ambushes, the booby trap techniques, right out of the Malaya Jungle School. I taught straight out of the Malaya Jungle School all the Gurkha tactics and techniques on both sides. How you defeat the guerrilla and how you are the guerrilla. So I showed both. And then that's what we taught in the school. And it became so damn famous. While I was there, we did 15,000 Marines, but I had Navy SEAL teams, I had Special Forces teams, and I had 3 CB battalions. One of the CB battalions that came down to train in our school, they came from Quonset Point, Rhode Island, before they went to Vietnam. And one of the battalions, like all 3, trained in what we called, I had a young captain, Silver Star winner, had just come out of Vietnam. And when he got to the front door, he found out we had a guerrilla school, and he asked us, "I'd like to join the guerrilla school." Doug McCaskill, just a genius in the field, Silver Stars, no slouch. And so Doug joins my guerrilla team, and he teaches the Seabees how to set up 1/2 mile counter ambush tactics and techniques, because they would take a 1/2 mile coming in through these roads in Vietnam, and get ambushed. Well, Doug taught them a technique. You're off that vehicle in teams. You come off the trip. You're immediately this way. You never fire below the horizontal. You fire. If you fire slightly uphill so you don't hit your buddies ahead of you. And it wasn't even a week or so until this one battalion writes back to General Simpson, the commanding general, and said, "Your counter-guerrilla training, your ambush, motor vehicle ambush training that you gave us saved our lives.
Wow.
So we used what we were taught, and we fought our way. We shocked the hell out of the enemy. It was a quarter-mile, half-mile long ambush. He said, we fought our ways up, because you come off the truck, you immediately turn, and then you start shooting. You just shoot. You just open up and shoot. You're spraying. But you never spray horizontal, because you hit your buddy up ahead of you. Because, you know, everybody's jumped off and turned, immediately turn, and then you just start sweeping. And he said we knocked the shit out of a Viet Cong battalion that thought they had us ambushed. So that put us on the map.
That'd make you feel pretty good to know that what you taught
Well,
paid off.
General Simpson couldn't. I got the greatest fitness report. When I left there, it was unreal what I got for a fitness report, because I went from Camp Lejeune. I was going to go to Vietnam from Camp Lejeune. Guess where I had orders to before going to Vietnam? I had changed I had orders to go to Notre Dame.
Did you? Oh my!
And I had my wife was going to kill me, because I went to the monitor and said, I have to get to Vietnam. I have to get to Vietnam. Well, as a major, you know, and you don't want to run around with nothing on your chest, for God's sake.
Yeah.
I got to get to Vietnam. I was over there just a little while ago, but not like this.
Yeah.
So what year was this?
That would have been, I got my orders in December '66. I went to Vietnam.
Oh my God.
And I was there till just before Tet '68.
Oh boy.
And I was advisor of the Vietnamese Marine Corps, which is up there somewhere. I was a Covan. See the word Covan?
Yeah.
That means trusted friend. Yeah. I wrote 2 books about being an advisor to the Vietnamese Marines, and they were exceptional.
So when you went in '66, you went as an advisor to the Vietnamese.
Yes.
Okay.
I
You
went-
didn't go as part of a military unit of Americans to.
Well, the Americans had already gone in March of 1965. It sent the 9th Marines in there.
Okay.
And Air Cabinet had its famous Ya Drang. Remember Mel Gibson in the movie We Were Soldiers?
Yeah.
That took place up at the Ya Drang against they're outnumbered 3 to 5 times or something like that. And you see that in the movie We Were Soldiers. I went right behind that.
Okay.
I was in the very earliest of the advisors that went over in '66. We had several advisors that had been there before that, Bill Leftwich and Pete Eller, who introduced me to my wife. Pete got the Silver Star, was almost killed at Van Kep, and I got to see where half his battalion had been massacred by a VC regiment that they ran into. And then my buddy Jerry Devlin, I learned later, was shot to hell up at the same place. The Army captain who I was at Benning with, he'd had his stomach shot out at the same place in the same battle, with Pete trying to rescue them. So the world became very small, and then I wound up an advisor to Vietnamese Marines, and I was always working with the Army. I was with the Air Cav for 5 months at Bong Son in 2 Corps, and then I worked with the Mobile Riverine Force.
Okay. Yeah. That was.
The Mobile Riverine Force was down in the Delta and the Rung Sat Special Zone. We had a 480 square mile swamp that this gentleman, when he was a captain, sent his helicopter in every morning. I got one of his chopper pilots, young warrant officer, captain. What they did was they were so trained in it, because they were 100 and some miles over here in Sok Trang. He never came in. I never got to meet him until I meet him in the apartment in the hallway. I meet Lieutenant General But back when he was a captain, he was the guy supporting me directly in the swamp with his Thunderbirds. And we knocked out 28 guerrilla camps in that 78-day period with his guys. And he wrote me up for 12 air medals.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a few awards. Anyway, that's kind of like Vietnam happened for me. Next thing I know, I'm in Vietnam, an advisor, a covan as we called it, and but it was a year before the Tet Offensive, where everything had quieted down. Naturally, that would be my year, because the year I was up, 6 months I was up there with the Air Cav. The Air Cav was here at Landing Zone English. We had the main Highway 1 came up 7 clicks up here as us on Landing Zone Uplift. Westmoreland never let us have combined operations. It was always joint operations. He did not trust or like the ARVN. Well, we were the elite of the ARVN. We were the Airborne Ranger and Marines. But it didn't make any difference. He had spies come in on his staff if something happened. So Westmoreland never let us get anywhere near any. I would have loved to have had some of my platoons or my companies go out with these Air Cav guys. They were that good. Superb outfit, Army Air Cav. But anytime out, General Tolson, call up his S3, can I get a helilift for a platoon? Sure. Right then. Choppers, you need choppers, chopper support, AO support, whatever you need. Haul us wherever we want to go. So anyway, that was my experience in Nam. It was not like happened the month after I left the Tet Offensive hit, and all hell broke loose in Vietnam at that time. I was in Rensselaer Poly getting a master's degree.
So what was the toughest thing you faced in Vietnam?
How to survive physically. Maybe dysentery. I lost 47 pounds. I was just a rail when I have a picture picking up my wife and little girls in Australia, and there's this skinny frame standing there. That's me. When I went to Rensselaer, I bought a suit that was a size 30, and by the time I finished the school, I couldn't get into it because I was back up to a 36 waist. I'd gone from a size, but since we lived off the land as advisors, and we drank the filthy stream water, when we didn't have the clear B-52 holes to take fresh water out of, you had to drink the filthy stream water to get enough liquid, and then we ate the monkeys, snakes, and whatever our cowboys could find. And when they cooked it, they'd cook it in little chunks so you didn't know what the hell you were eating, and put it over rice. And then we find out we come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and we were cleaning out North Vietnamese camps. They lived like kings, the North Vietnamese. Oh, we went from the Cambodian border down towards Tay Ninh. The Army's 173rd is here, and we're here, and the Army's flying hot chow in 3 times a day over here, 2 kilometers away, and we're living off and we're living off whatever we could. We lived off whatever we could catch, crawl, slithered, or whatever the hell it was.
What kind of work you were doing? There had to also been a sense of accomplishment. Was there any particular thing that you were really proud of that you did, or that your guys did, or?
I just thought, like that book. I want to give you a copy of this book. It's right there on top. See that?
This one?
No, next one over. That book. No, to the right. That one, right? That book underneath there. That book.
All right.
Let me see that book, please.
War War.
Yeah, this book was. I hope I didn't autograph this to somebody. No, I can autograph this to you. This book, 10 veterans that I sponsored, wrote this book 50 years after the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And it's won all kinds of prizes. It's presented at Quantico, it's presented to the university, to the basic school. And it's also here, it won the top Evie Award in Colorado. It's one of the top books. That's for you. I'll autograph
I
it.
appreciate that. How do you fight as a guerrilla unit? Can you give me 4 or 5 major points that...
Yes. First of all, never use a road or a heavily worn path, a highway. Always use the natural streams and the worst foliage in the country as the guerrilla. That's where I trained my guerrillas at Camp Pickett, to never ever use any trails. To walk the stream bed, I'd send, my squad leaders loved the way that I let them train at Camp Pickett, because the months before the exercise started in Blackstone, we're in an 80 square mile area, and as I said, the farmers got to where we would help them do their harvesting. Hell, they'd board up their trucks and haul us all over that 80 square mile area, drop us so we could set up different ambush sites, different ways. And so...
Make yourself untrackable.
Yeah, but mostly never use the reason that we wiped out their 2,500 man force so fast. There was 2 full battalions, and that would have been, a battalion would have been reinforced, would have been 1,000, 1,800. Let's see, one battalion would have, let's see, it was a 2,500 man brigade. A battalion would have been like 900, something like that, troops. We baited them into collapsing horseshoe. They would, most all of them were so used to staying on a roadway or a well-known pathway that all I had to do is just dig spider traps. You dig a spider trap that's 4 feet deep, you put a thatch cover on the thing, and you set up a dozen guerrillas, and then in comes a platoon, and the umpire's a major lieutenant colonel with us. As soon as that ambush went, he said, "Get on the trucks and back to Lejeune, you're dead. The guerrillas just wiped you out." So we wiped out the majority of the so-called ground troops within the first 3-4 days. We used their comm wire at night, where they strung comm wire all over the we tapped into their comm wire and used it to communicate at night. I used Gurkha techniques on every kind of thing you could name. Collapsing horseshoe. Like I said, they were not trained in any counter-guerrilla tactics of any kind. They were just pulled off of one come out of the Med, another came out of Lejeune, and expected to go fight guerrillas. And I was trying to say to my umpire, who was an Iwo Jima veteran himself, the head of umpires, I said, "Colonel, these guys have had no training to fight us." He says, "I know. That's what we're trying to find out in the exercise. How bad is it?" I said, "Well, we're going to decimate them." I said, "They're just walking into every trap we set. All we're doing is just setting trap after trap for them." I said, "If you notice, we never use one road or one pathway of any kind." I said, "At night, I have my sergeant take his squad, and I said, now take those streams and follow it over to that swamp, and then get them out in the swamp with a reed, put them underwater, let them breathe through a reed, and see how many city boys we have. We got too many city boys, they go back to Lejeune. We got volunteers at Lejeune want to come and be guerrillas." Well, to go out in the swamp where it's cool and cold at night, and you take a reed and you sit underneath the water, and you can put a reed in your mouth, put it 6 inches to a foot above water. You can hide that way.
Yeah.
But we got the guys who wouldn't even come near the swamp. They didn't even want to come up near the swamp, so going in the swamp was a piece of cake. And I kept saying to my colonel, umpire, I said, Colonel, they've had no training for what's going on here. There has to be some kind of training before they should be conducting a counter-guerrilla exercise. He said, we're learning that. Well, I said, I'm afraid to tell you, but the guerrillas are going to win. He says, I'm afraid you're right. And I have a picture inside one of my books here. I was known as Pablo. This is the commanding general of the 2nd Marine Division and FMF Land. They don't get any higher in rank than those guys. And I'm briefing them of how we're going to conduct this exercise. And this is the picture they put of me for the area. I didn't look like that, but they dressed me up to look that way.
You still have the hat?
Oh yeah, it's an Aussie hat.
There you go. Make sure you wear it down to dinner next time you go.
Sure, for sure.
Just shake them up a little. Oh, it sounds to me as though first you blend in with your surroundings and make yourself untrackable. You bait your enemy. You don't attack them, but you bait them and draw them into you.
You draw them into what they call a collapsing horseshoe.
Yeah.
Was the thing that worked.
And the third key seems to be that you win the
Hearts and minds.
local
The
population.
hearts and minds. This is so critical. This is so critical of what you can hardly buy this book today. The guerrillas, the people that are revolutionary all over the world are now reading him. He's that popular, General Jop. But his People's War, People's Army, is the Bible on how you organize. And not one Marine officer, senior officer, had looked at it or read it. Even when I tried to present it back at Camp Lejeune, I said, sir, we've got to start teaching this to our kids going to Vietnam. This is the Bible on our enemy. He's telling us how he's going to fight you in the war. Oh, no, we don't buy that. We don't buy that stuff. None of that stuff. So it fell on...
I remember we did that Vietnamization push in the war where we tried to win over the hearts of the Vietnamese people.
Bunch of hogwash.
Yeah.
Jop, see by not reading Jop, you couldn't understand what People's War, People's Army. Jop organized every single person in every single village, from the lowest little boys that you saw them on the water buffaloes. When you'd go out, like when I was on Deck House 5, the first amphibious landing in the Delta, I'd go out on patrol with one of our platoons. When you get out to the rice paddy areas, you'd see a little boy sitting on a water buffalo. And if you look down the stream about a quarter mile, you see another little boy sitting on a water buffalo. Another quarter mile, a little boy on a water buffalo. A little boy on a water buffalo. The intelligence net. We move, little boy jumps off, runs. Set up the ambush for us. We had learned none of this. And I'm coming back a working party of one who knew too much about it all, and they didn't want to hear me. They didn't want to listen to me or anything I had to say about guerrilla warfare. It took an exercise at Camp Pickett, Virginia, for the Commandant of the Marine Corps to terminate that exercise. Says, in other words, saying to me, okay, I got you, I do understand what you've been trying to say. We thought this was going to be a large-scale Marine Corps-sized exercise where this brigade's going to come in and mop you guys up in a couple of days, and all we did is just no helicopters, no trucks. We took the trucks out. No all their engineering equipment. We blew it up by the second night. No guards on any of their stuff. We just went in and blew everything up. So the CP's living without lights. And they're living with nothing. They're having to live the hard life. And pissing and moaning that this is what the guerrillas have done to us. Well, sir, General Green, this is what you asked us to do. I'm thinking, he said, I didn't expect this much. I didn't expect this much. We literally decimated them in half the exercise time, which he had to terminate. And then he brings me into one of my guerrilla camps where we prepared and trained, and brought the brigade staff in, the battalion staff from one of the battalions, and the other battalion staff. Says, now, I want you to tell them how you did it. And I'm thinking, well, there goes my career, General.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm standing next to him, and he goes, I don't think so. I want you to tell them what you did and how you did it, because they were not expecting the guerrillas were ever supposed to win that exercise. We were supposed to go up there, get on a hill, and let them run through us, kill us, and it's going to be all over.
Put a flag out.
Huh?
And put a flag out.
And then put a flag up. Yeah. But that's how we trained in Vieques. We had this objective, and that intermediate objective. We would attack and take this objective, then we would attack and take the next objective. Well, wait a minute. There are no objectives with the guerrillas. The guerrilla has no objectives, sir.
We'd capture it, walk away, and they just walk right back onto the hill after we'd lost so many people.
It took so long until they let me start the counter-guerrilla school at Camp Lejeune, and it took Camp Pickett's lessons of Camp Pickett, where I didn't dare come back from Camp Pickett for what I had done with those guerrillas. So I wound up going to special warfare twice, two special warfare schools until Christmas. This is like November, December. I'm going to school, and I'm back in time for Dave Lowndes to get a hold of me at the Christmas party. Said, when are you going to take off that guerrilla jockstrap? And this is a bird colonel going to go to command FMS Land, but he doesn't know that he's going to command the base of Dong Ha, which almost gets overrun by the North Vietnamese, General Giap. Giap was the genius of warfare, but we didn't want to accept it. You know who knew he was a genius of warfare? Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin knew exactly what he was doing. It was Joseph Stalin in 1950 who called Ho Chi Minh, Giap, and Mao Zedong to a meeting in Russia. And Joseph Stalin actually planned the Korean War, 1950, against the protesting of Mao Zedong. It says, I just took over Chinese, I just won in China, sir. I just won. I got ragtag guerrillas is all I've got. Chiang Kai-shek took the best of the army, the best of the military with him. I've got ragtags. That's all I got left. Stalin, I don't give a shit. I don't care. I want you to attack. When they go into Korea, I want you to attack. And then my guys that I got to know in Colorado, my guys who were Korean War vets, says, if you wanted to see some of the saddest sights, he said, Tom Ryan and Bill Houghton were two Korean veteran machine gunners. And he said, if you wanted to see something that just turned your stomach, he said, here come these Chinese troops by the hundreds and hundreds. A third of them don't even have shoes. Their feet are wrapped in cloth. Half of them aren't even carrying a rifle. They're waiting until their buddy goes down so they could pick his rifle up. And I'm thinking, you guys saw this. He said, what's worse, he said, we have to live with the fact that we had interlocking bands of machine gun fire that dropped them like cordwood down below. And they were coming, and they were still coming. And Joe Ryan tells the funniest story one time. He said, he said, you know, we're in Korea and it's cold as hell. We're standing in chow line. It's snow is coming down and we're waiting to get some hot something. And he said, I turn around and look behind me. It's a Chinaman with his feet wrapped in rags. A Chinese soldier got in the chow line. And Joseph, I felt so sorry for the little bastard. I gave him some chow.
You're hungry, you're hungry.
Just,
Working weight.
just crazy, you know,
Yeah.
the stuff that we had to see and do.
Yeah.
But no, it was the guerrilla war was not accepted at all by senior Marines. We did when I wrote an article. I was going to copy it off and have it here for you, but it's called "The Forgotten Subject," and it's in one of my books over there. I wrote an article to the Marine Corps Gazette in 1962 after what I had seen in Southeast Asia and what I saw coming ahead. I could actually see what was coming into even places like Vietnam and that, because they were already well into South Vietnam with their cadres and everything else. And I wrote an article called "The Forgotten Subject" to T.N. Green, the editor of the Marine Corps Gazette. And Green writes me back a blistering note. He said, you couldn't be more off base or more addled if you think we should be training Marines in this type of warfare. Marines will never go to Vietnam. The Commandant says, our Commandant at the time was Dave Shoup, Medal of Honor winner. And he had said this, I'm not sending Marines to Vietnam. And T.N. Green is quoting him. And mind you, this is 62 now, when I sent that article in. And I have a copy of it there. It's called "The Forgotten Subject." Hey, we forgot to teach our guys how to fight guerrillas in this kind of warfare. Well, we're not going to do it. We just aren't going to be doing it. The hell you're not.
Do you think we could have won the Vietnam War?
Never.
We just didn't have the culture or the mindset to be able to.
No, you had to get these two books. When I taught at the War College, I was the only lecturer at the Naval War College on the Vietnam War. The Admiral called me in personally from my extensive background of what I had actual experience in Asia and all the rest of it. My writings, and they knew me to be the guerrilla guy in the Marine Corps at the time. And Admiral Leborgeau called me in at that time and said, I want you to teach the Vietnam War. And he said, but you're going to be the only instructor that's going to teach. I was an adjunct professor, but I was a student at the same time. So I introduced these two books. And I said, what Jop has done here is pure genius. Anyway, the Admiral called me in and said, you're going to be the only lecturer on the Vietnam War. Wow. Because he knew my background. They even had Bing West, the author of The Village, and one hell of a Marine who was experienced in Vietnam, village operations, Marine, and he wrote all about his village. He was a professor at the War College, yet the Admiral singled me out to be the lecturer on the Vietnam War. Because I went way back. He knew I went way back to, 61, 62, out of Malaya, from there forward. And so I held to Jop. I said, you have to read General Jop to understand what he means by People's War, People's Army. At the village level, the humblest peasant, the woman, the little boy running water buffalo to water buffalo, the maker of local booby traps, those who set booby traps along the trail near their villages, that's at your lowest level of Jop's People's Army. The next level was the Viet Cong as squads, platoons, and companies that they could muster by signal. He had actually formed guerrilla battalions that we fought, and several of my friends fought guerrilla battalions. The Chinese had armed and trained Giap's armies, his NVA, his North Vietnamese armies, to be the elite of all. They were conventional, almost conventional fighters, as they turned out to be at Way City years later. So you had Giap's ranked level from the lowest villagers preparing in booby traps, setting the booby traps, to the Viet Cong cadres that came out of the villages, to the Viet Cong companies, the battalions that could muster from dozens of villages, muster a battalion all of a sudden, ambush an American unit, disappear, be back gone again. You had that organization, and you had his main force, which today now people look back and said one of the finest trained and best trained armies in the world was General Giap's conventional North Vietnamese army. They were the best of the best. The Chinese had trained them. Stalin ordered the Chinese to equip them, and it cost Mao Zedong all kinds of trucks and tanks, not tanks, but weaponry. 4,000 pieces he had to turn over to arm the North Vietnamese and train the North Vietnamese. So it was the finest trained army, the second best army in the world when they beat the French. Remember when they beat the French at Dien Bien Phu? There were 200,000 Frenchmen at Dien Bien Phu in the chamber pot. 200,000, 9,000 alone were paratroop. They're elite paratroopers. And what happened is that Dien Bien Phu is out in the western part of North Vietnam. If you consider Way City, Hanoi, all over here, you go out west, there's a air base the French had. It was like about 5 square miles inside mountain ranges of 3,000 feet around it like this. This end was open. The French chose to put the majority of 200,000 some troops in trench lines just outside the base, and then artillery, their artillery inside that they were planning on Giap attacking from the west, from the east. He's going to have to come through the open end. Right. So we're preparing for him to come. You know what Giap does? He hauls his 105 howitzers and his 4-deuce mortars up 3,000 feet of the mountains that surround Dien Bien Phu. So he's got them surrounded on 3 sides. If there wasn't a cave, there already to slip the artillery piece into, they dug the cave. So they could get their caves. They're totally protected. And when they wanted to shoot, out they came, shot the shit out of them down below. And in the meantime, Giap is tunneling from the open side. He's now tunneling with his tunnel rats to get into the base, and they're almost inside the base by the time the French can't fly an airplane, can't be resupplied, and surrendered 200,000. And that's what left Vietnam in 1953. And then with the departure of the French, 53, 54, my good friend Victor Croizat, who translated the French lessons learned of the war. Few people remember or even wanted to recall that the French wrote down every single thing that happened to them in this book here. And Victor, being a Frenchman himself, translated that for General Westmoreland. General Harkins looked at it, didn't give it that much attention, but then when he went to give it to Westmoreland, Westmoreland's reply was, "What can the French teach us they lost?"
Oh, no.
Oh, you poor dumb bastard, you. You ignorant S.O., you ignorant man. What can the French teach us? This is in the movie with Mel Gibson in his living room. When you see Mel Gibson getting ready to go off with the Air Cav in that movie, he's got papers strewn all over his living room. The maps that are in here, the maps of what the French, what happened to the French vehicles and all that, ambushes and that, they're scattered on his living room floor. You see pictures on his living room floor in the movie. And that's what they ran into at the Ia Drang. They ran into a powerful North Vietnamese army at that time, and it was no slouch army. Giap's army was one of the, today they look back, what Giap's army was like was just unbelievably, probably the most elite army trained, better than the Chinese and better than the Russians. And that's what we ran into in Vietnam. That's who we fought in Vietnam primarily. And if it had been our overwhelming bombing and others' support, you know, no, we could never have won the war. That's what my buddies say in our book that we wrote also. That's what my buddies say in the one I just showed you, Echoes of Our War. Yeah, in Echoes they write about this 50 years later. There's no way we could have won the war. People's war, People's Army included every single person in the country, from the lowest water buffalo boy all the way up. They were all part of Giap's army. And see, what was frustrating to me, I tried to get the Marine Corps in those early days in 62, 63. I said, would you please go down to Hong Kong or Taipei and buy these books and read them? When I got to the War College, Admiral wants me to teach. I said, I'm only going to teach these 2 books. They'll tell you, when you learn what Giap's war is about, he orchestrates that war step by step. And we didn't have one person read it. Bob Fischer, somebody like Bob Fischer. No, I won't waste my time on that.
Reminds me of that line in the movie Patton where Patton hollers at Rommel and says,
I read your book. No, that's the truth.
So in 1968, you left Vietnam. What happened after that?
In 60, let's see, in January 68, right before Tet, the great big Tet offensive happened, I was selected to go to a master's program at Rensselaer Polytechnic. So that was my future. And I was, by the time I left Vietnam, my dad cried when I walked in the front door in the middle of winter in January, bringing my little family from Australia back to get my car in California where my sister lived, and driving them back to Dubuque, Iowa in the middle of winter. And we pulled up to the house, and my girls loved going with their grandma, because she just doted on them. She had Santa Claus for them, everything. But I had never seen my dad show emotion. But if you took a look at my picture, I weighed 145 pounds. I'm a 200-pounder. I had amoebic dysentery. I was a physical wreck. I didn't realize that I had the Agent Orange already, but it was latent in my legs. It wouldn't come out till I was 78 years old. But the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and then 180 days in that swamp with that, which had been defoliated Agent Orange, it took a while for it to seep through my body and take my legs away. So I paid my price for Vietnam. It got me, but never forget my dad. And he had seen war.
He had seen war. He understood. And he was seeing his son.
Well, he saw the wreck. He saw the wreck that showed up at his front door. I was an emaciated, tan, very dark tan, sick person at the time. And it took me a little while at Rensselaer. The guys at Rensselaer said, "You're coming in the third semester, you can't do it." I said, "I have to do it. They sent me out of that damn swamp. I'm not going back." I said, I don't know why the Marine Corps detailer would send me in the third semester, but stupidly they should have sent me to the reserve unit in Albany, New York for that 6 months to wait it out, to go that June.
Right.
And I go to Rensselaer and the guy said, "Oh God, you can't make it, you can't possibly make it. It's just too tough, too tough. You're going in the third semester. We've had all the preliminary computer stuff and everything else." I got 4 A's and a B. I was so puckered. I didn't go under. I actually got 4 A's and a B my first semester. And I came out with my MBA, and I went away from guerrilla wars. I went into logistics because my wife was not doing well either. I could see by the time I was getting my payback tour of 3 years at Barstow to be a production manager and then a plant manager, and then come down the logistic train and not go back in the infantry and leave her with 4 daughters in the shape she was in. It took a toll on my wife to be a Marine wife, and she did not look well. So I said, "Bullshit! I'm going to go supply logistics," which was a smart move because I got some tremendous tours of duty from there on. Some of my best medals came from those tours too, and no, it worked out. It worked out for me. If I'd have gone back, I would have been 5th Marine Regiment commander. I would have been a regimental commander and all that good stuff. But I'd have gone back overseas again. They'd have put me overseas without my wife and girls. And I said, "Bullshit! I'm worn out. I've had enough." And my buddy Pete, who introduced me to my wife, said the same thing. He said, "Bob, I'm retiring. I'm getting out. I'm not going to do it to her anymore." He says, "I've left her 3 times now to go overseas." And I said, "I'm not going to pull another one." I said, "Pete, you're smart." 28 years in, he said, "I've had enough. And he got one hell of a job there in Solana Beach, California. I got one hell of a job when I came out. I did really well. So I can't bitch.
Heard another very wise man today talk about how tough it is on the military wives.
Oh, they're saints when you think about what a military, especially a Navy wife like his wife. The Navy's gone on ships all the time. At least the Marine Corps, we're back and forth, and we get to be with them here and there, But I was gone 8 years out of 30-year career. I sized up 8 years without my family. That was enough.
Seems to me that if you had gone back to Vietnam, you would have been in a situation where you would have been asked to fight the kind of war that you knew wouldn't work.
Exactly. No, I had already given up on Vietnam.
Yeah.
By the time I had come out of Vietnam, I saw the fact that we were fighting it completely wrong. Jop was twisting our nose. It didn't matter how many troops we put in there. LBJ and McNamara couldn't have been a dumber pair to be in charge at that time. Absolutely pathetic, ignorant people. And then, of course, who's here is one of the guys that worked 25 years for McNamara is one of the guys that lives here. I don't say very much.
I get that.
He worked right in the White House for 25 years with McNamara. Wow.
We made some pretty good cars.
Well, whatever worked out, here we are. We got this far, and I would not like to say, like my buddies say in the book there, they look back 50 years, and every one of them say it was a war just like George Bush's wars in Iraq, and the wars that Afghanistan, we should never have entered. any of those three wars. And they're right, absolutely right. We should have stayed the hell out. We didn't belong in Vietnam because we didn't understand Vietnam. Very few did. And that's it.
Salesman and the music man said, but he doesn't know the territory.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess.
Robert Preston,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, you got out of the Marine Corps what year?
I got out in '82. I came here and retired in '82. I retired 2 years early because I had 2 years reserve time, and I got employed. We started, when I first got out, my first 3 years, 6 of us Marines started the recycling machine that gave you your nickel back for the container you put in the supermarket, in the machine. I was one of the inventors of those machines.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And in VIPCO, Environmental Products Corporation. So I spent 3 years with that until I found out, hey, they have me on the road all the time. I can't do this to my beautiful Aussie.
Oh, yeah.
So I was out in Dayton, Ohio. I forget what I was doing. I was in Dayton, Ohio, where I commanded Defense Electronics at Kettering. I was the commander of the Defense Electronics Depot. And I was in Dayton, Ohio, when I announced the fact that I was going to be getting out. And I get a call the next. I'm home, and I go to work for Grumman. Grumman hired. I got Grumman a $250,000. No, $250 million. I won a $250 million contract for Grumman Data Systems out of Bet. Only one they'd ever won. The maintenance program for the Air Force, DEMIS. I helped set it up in the class. I set up a wall-to-wall posters. We just blew them away, our solution. And I had written a book on depot maintenance back when I was at Barstow on my payback tour. I'd already written a book on depot maintenance. So all I had is convert it to what we were doing there. Well, we won hands down. Well, the next thing I know, the vice presidents at Grumman, who we never saw the whole time we're putting this whole thing together, come forward to take credit. Oh, naturally, they'll all come pouring out. They come out of the woodwork to take credit for everything. And I'm at a party with the Air Force brass, getting ready to announce the kickoff in Dayton, Ohio. And I'm listening to the alcoholic president of Grumman Data Systems try to talk to the Air Force generals. And I'm not paying much attention. He turns to me because, and Fischer here, he'll be taking the implementation teams out. 7 Air Force bases. We're going to get him out of town so he can't be a threat, because everybody else who won that way wound up a vice president. Not me. Not me. They were going to make sure they got rid of me. And I heard him say that, and I said, it cost me $25,000 to make that statement, because that was my bonus. But I said in front of him and the generals, I said, no, sir, I won't be coming to Dayton. I said, I commanded the depot here, Defense Electronics, for 3 years, and that was enough for me. I said, I have enough Dayton. I'm not coming back. Half drunk, he's looking at me. I get called in the next day, and I said, no, I meant that. So I said, in fact, I not only meant it, I went home, told my wife what I had done. She said, well, you don't have another job. I lived right over here on next to George Mason, in George Mason Forest. I come home and I fly home and I tell Gwenny, I said, no, I'm not going to go be the implementation team guy, where they're going to have me take 6 or 7 of their engineers and production guys, and I'm going to go to 7 depots in the next 4 or 5 years to implement a 250. I said, that was to get me out of town, to get rid of me.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I would have never seen you again. I'd have been gone all the time. Do you realize? She understood.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there having breakfast the next morning. The phone rings. This is Norm Hollander. He said, I'm with Price Waterhouse. He said, I heard you left Grumman.
Ah,
What? He said, I'd like to make you an offer. All right.
Speak.
You know what he offered me?
It doesn't matter.
He says, I have new MBA hires that we bring in all the time. We bring them out of universities and they have no idea what government, this is Office of Government Services. They have no idea what the government is. I need a gray hair who can come in here and teach these young MBAs. And we have the Delta Airline contract where they're going to take airplanes apart. They've never even seen an airplane. He said, we need you to come in. He said, you can pick your own 20 hours that you want to work. And would 75,000 do? Are you kidding? This is when? 1982, 83?
oh, yeah.
75, and a car.
And a car.
And a car.
Oh, even, okay, well.
And a computer. And I'm thinking,
Oh, what's that?
yeah, and I said, geez, those days it was a tandem, the old tandems that you got. But I said, Jesus, I've died and gone to heaven. He said, you can pick your 20 hours that you want to work. Are you kidding? Get out of my house here, right over here, drive to Vienna, get on the metro, get off, there's Price Waterhouse. I come home, I put in my 4 hours, I come home. Well, my partner at that time turned out my partner had started, he'd retired Air Force colonel, had been the aide at Defense Depot Dayton. He was the aide to the general there, 3-star general, 2-star general. And Mike was starting his own business up. He said, how about coming to work for me as a consultant? He said, you got plenty of time. He said, you're going in. He said, you're going to go 20 hours to them. But I said, well, I hate to tell you, Mike, but you're going to come in too. They need you and Admiral McGillivray in the worst way. I'm booking you at $1,000 a day and I'm keeping 100. And he did the same with me. He said, well, I'm booking you at $1,000 a day and I'm keeping 100. And that's how we started. That's how I wound up here in the Beltway. I never made so damn much money.
That's great.
True story.
Well, you have had quite a life.
I've
Greatly.
had unbelievable. When I look back to think how when I was getting ready to go in the Marine Corps and getting ready to go in the Marine Corps in the spring of 1950, what if I had gone in the Marine Corps and gone and got the shit shot out of me in Korea and then come home to lay bricks with my dad? Yeah. Shot up or not, or maybe not even come back. You never knew. But just fate, I believe a lot in fate, of what fate has in store for us. Good things. I was lucky. I skipped across the rocks at the right place at the right time.
I like that analogy.
Yeah,
That is good.
I skipped across the rocks. I didn't wind up in the water.
I like that.
Yeah.
God was watching out for you because you knew how to kill a chicken.
That was hilarious too.
You know how to put it into practical use.
Yep.
Is there any other part of your life story that you'd like to get on here?
Oh, let's see. Well, most of it is, you know, my military history. I wasn't going to stay on and go up for Brigadier General and do that to my wife. So I'm glad that I retired when I did, because I wound up getting great jobs. I wound up having, but I lost her in 8 years. I lost her to cancer, and that when I lost her, I rented my house to the British Embassy, and I went to Colorado to live, to be near my daughter. One daughter I had not seen that much, so I went to live in Colorado and be near my brother, my little kid brother that I never grew up with. He was a retired police sergeant, and I wanted to be with my brother Ken that I'd not seen. He grew up with my dad. He was my dad's little buddy. But I left home when I was 17, and he was 2 years old. So I really never
Never knew.
so I had a ball with him for
That's right.
almost 30 years in Colorado before I came back here 5 years ago. Yeah. And that's when I came. My girls convinced me to come back. And my daughter Carrie from Colorado, she'll be sleeping in that bed here in another month. She'll be back with me.
I'm just thinking of just even if you'd gone in for 4 more years, what that would have stolen from you, the time you had with your wife, and
Oh yeah,
I mean that can't be replaced.
no,
I know all about that.
I know it was sad. We knew we had problems with the smoking, because she thought she had ear trouble until we went to the ear, nose, and throat doctors here, and I get called in 5 minutes after she's in there. She said, it's not ear, nose, and throat, it's cancer in her throat and her larynx, and then they took her. We took her to Virginia Beach for a weekend to just enjoy herself before we took her to the hospital. Walter Reed took her in, and Colonel Berry, a great head of thoracic surgery, couldn't have been nicer to her. And he sat her down, and so when they went to do the surgery to take out the cancer part of her throat here, they put the feeding tube down to her stomach so they could feed her liquid food, you know. They found the esophageal cancer, size of a walnut.
Yeah.
And the combination of the two is a 10% chance of living. And I will never forget sitting in Walter Reed Hospital here with Colonel Berry, and she's sitting on the side of the couch, and edge of the couch, and she said, well, Colonel, how long do I have to live? He says, 1 year, right on the money. A year later, I lost her a year ago. A year later in August, I lost her, sadly. And she's in Arlington Cemetery, 1990. And so at that point in time, I said, okay, I've had enough, Mike. I'm not interested in staying here, just making a lot of money living in an empty house without her. I'm going to go to Colorado to live. And so I decided to go to Colorado, and I bought a beautiful chalet up on the 9,500 feet up in the air on the other side of Conifer and Evergreen. Absolute spectacular views. So I get up there and I'm all by myself. My daughter Carrie lived down in Lakewood. My brother lived down in Lakewood, and I'm up 25 miles away in my beautiful home, looking out, and there's nothing but a roadway with nobody dirt road. I said, what did I just do? What did I just do? I stand there and I had no wife, and I thought, what the hell did you do? I bought at this gorgeous house. Well, I hung on for a while, but then my partners convinced me, come on back, Bob, I got some work for us to do. So I went back and joined him in the consulting thing again so I could be near my granddaughter, my beautiful new little granddaughter, Nikki, was my pride and joy. So I came back to work here I would work for 6 months and I'd go back out there for a month or so. But I would just keep coming back here.
A little longer.
Yeah, it was just, I kept the house for about 3 years, and the astronomer from Martin Marietti learned about me selling my house out there. He said, do you mind if I sleep on your porch one night till I catch the stars? So he went up, I said, sure, go ahead. So he goes up and sleeps on my porch because he wanted to watch the star patterns. And he comes back and he offered me one hell of a price.
Oh, I bet he did.
And I said, I'm thinking to myself, my girl says, Dad, take it. Take
Oh,
it,
yeah.
Dad. So that's how I came back. That's
Well,
how.
you had the time
Hmm?
with that daughter, you had the time with your
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah, right.
You're spending your time well.
Well, I had 30 years out there, which was pretty nice, you know, not bad.
Okay, tell me about the paintings. How'd you get involved in the artwork?
Well, I tell you, see those, see that one on the cross there? That's Naval Academy, one in the center right back there,
Okay.
single one of Jesus. That's 1953 at Naval Academy. It's coming apart at the seams because I barely kept the edges on it. But I love that painting, and I've had dozens ask me for copies of it. And then I was a staff artist for the Naval Academy's Trident magazine up there. I was
Oh,
their,
yeah, sure.
that was the Army-Navy game, 1953 or 54. That was the cover for the Army-Navy game, and that's a caricature of me down below it. And that bridge up there is one I did up in New Hampshire when, for some reason I was in Concord, New Hampshire, and I spotted that bridge. And
I didn't know that area.
Yeah.
of course. So I wind up, come in, that's probably my dinner.
Okay. Put a pause here.
Oh, okay, there we go. Now let's get it on here. Let's see if we can get it.
That is a beautiful woman.
It is.
Okay, let me find her again.
See-
We're going to take a long look at this young lady.
Where, do you know where that was taken?
Carmel, California.
I was getting ready to say
No.
Monterey.
Del Mar.
Yeah, Del Mar,
Okay.
okay.
Yep.
I was going to say,
Yeah, she loved it out there.
yeah. Okay, now let's come back.
She reminds me a little bit of my sister.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know that face from somewhere. Wow.
Oh my word.
Okay, I'm going. Okay. This is engagement photos and. Okay.
And the colored photos at the bottom.
Okay. Hang on. I'm working on. I gotta get a close up of this one. I don't know if the focus will work or not. Yeah, we're getting there.
So how long was it between the time you met her and the time you wound up getting married?
Met her in mid-September, married her April 7th, following September, October, November, December, January, February, March, 7 months.
Well, you sure know how to jitterbug.
I made, well, she was going to go home to Australia, and I had my chance. She was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous woman. Boy, she could dance, which is what I loved.
I got it, Don. I got it. I agree.
Let me see if I,
Turn. I'll get to, now, this a few weeks before she passed away.
just
right?
about, yeah, just a few weeks.
Okay, let's get a good run. Now I'm going to go to the bottom.
And this is that way too lean Marine.
Yeah,
Came back from Vietnam.
yep, that'd be me.
Feel like I'm moving too much.
Oh, you're all right. I'm moving the camera, so what's the point? Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Okay. Go.
Well, you've given us quite a good interview here and a lot of information, and you've shared your wife with us, and I really appreciate your hospitality.
It's been a ball. I loved it.
Is there anything in life you haven't gotten around to doing yet that you wished you could do?
Well, I told you I'm on to my 14th book right now, which is called My Peace, My Pace, and My Place. And it's about half finished.
Oh, okay.
that's the last book. Otherwise, I won Book of the Year
Right.
up there in the middle about the hyperbaric. I was one of the founders of the hyperbaric oxygen therapy program
Were you really?
in America.
Yeah, my son's gone through some of that.
Well, I was lucky. I got out to Colorado, and I'd lost my wife, and I moved to Colorado, and I get a call out of the blue from a guy who had been in the Marine Corps, was bringing back soldiers, Army and other types down at Fort Carson, and he calls me up. Bob, his name was Bob. He calls me up and says, "I think you might be interested in a pitch that they're going to give in Boulder. It's on hyperbaric oxygen therapy." I said, "What? Snake oil? What do I want that?" He said, "I think you'll like it." So the guy on the cover of the book, whoever that book is, the guy that's on the cover on the right side, that's Eddie. See that picture in the middle?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Eddie. He and our doctor, who's in that book, Dr. Julie, are giving a talk at Boulder that coming Friday night, and they put one veteran through already, one basket case, and these guys were the ones that had the traumatic brain injury from the IEDs
Okay.
in Iraq,
Okay.
and they had a combination of traumatic brain injury and PTSD. We did not have anything to do with PTSD at the time, but they were starting to take these people in to take the swelling out of their brain and putting them in this oxygen tank that they had, and then they put a hood on them as well. And in 30 hours, they were having this dramatic effect of the brain. You could see on x-rays, on these special x-rays that were developed to do brain shots, you could see the brain losing its gray areas where the dendrites had dried up, and all of a sudden the dendrites are coming back and are fully grown back in, and we've healed the veteran. They've healed the veteran. And I get a call from the Secretary of the Army. His name is Marty Hoffman. He's in the book. He said, "This is Marty Hoffman. I'm Secretary of the Army for Nixon and Ford." He said, "I want you to meet a guy in Colorado, Caleb Gates." He said, I'd like you to get involved in what he's involved in." He said, "You don't know anything about hyperbaric oxygen therapy, but he said, from what I've heard about you, you might be the guy we would like to have get involved in the program." So next thing I know, I'm meeting Caleb. We're going to go up in this burnt, like a broom closet. They have their first clinic in. It's like a broom closet, literally. One little old machine that you sit up inside, and you spend 30 hours in this thing. So I join Caleb, and we go up and we see this. And the next thing I know, I'm for some reason, I'm trying to get this put together. There was a guy on his deathbed. So somewhere, where was he at the time? In Chicago somewhere. This guy's on his deathbed, and I'm trying to raise money for this clinic that I know very little about. Well, the shock of all shock comes. Here comes, the guy dies, and here comes a check in the mail, a little check, $50,000.
Wow.
And I had met Caleb Gates, who was the president of Denver Investments, who Marty Hoffman had contacted, said, I'd like you and Bob Fischer to get together and have a look at this hyperbaric program. It's got a lot of exciting things going for it. Okay, I got together with Caleb. Yep, we'll do that. We go up and we look at their broom closet. We don't like it. So somehow Eddie lets it be known to Caleb. He said, well, we just got a check from Bob Fischer for $50,000. Caleb thought I gave him the $50,000. So he immediately sits down and writes his own $50,000.
Holy moly.
So all of a sudden they got $100,000 that quick, and all of a sudden we have us a clinic, and we're able to buy these machines. At that time you could buy these machines for $12,000, $13,000. They're $50,000 to $75,000 a day.
Oh yeah.
And we were able to expand that little simple back room clinic of theirs into what they have 6 chambers today in Roseville, or in Colorado. What's the name of small town east of Colorado, east of the University of Colorado? I forget what's the name of the place. Anyway, it's still going to this day, but I was able to be the godfather and raise all kinds of money for them. We had my Cooper's Troopers raised $5,000 here, $2,000 here. All kinds of clubs that were giving us checks. And the next thing we know, I raised $50,000 more dollars for them, and we're starting to put the place on the map. We're able to buy more machines.
Yeah.
And then we even found a much better place for the clinic, where the clinic is actually today a very nice clinic. So it now has 6 machines, and in my time we did 450 veterans successfully.
Wow.
450, and these were basket case. When they come in divorced from family,
Yeah.
were drinkers, drug, terrible mess. I won the American Legion Veteran of the Year for my program right here. That was my award, and it tells the whole story of the hyperbaric therapy program. This is our expert PTSD counselor. This is the home we rent for them.
Okay.
We have a home that we put 6 of them in at a time. This is what the healing looks like.
Wow.
We have it all down in spades, and it's these are some of our kids that we. This is our favorite gal. This is Margot, who was in a terrible Jeep accident. Her Humvee, where are you, huh? There she is. This is what she was in. This is our Margot. She watches her 2 girlfriends get burned alive right ahead of her, and she's a real basket case with all that.
I can imagine.
And then she goes back one more time and she gets hit. She hits a mine herself and slams her head to where they got to take her to Germany and give her surgery in Germany. This little jewel. Margot takes 100 treatments that we sent her to the famous Dr. Karch, but it didn't work with him. He gave her something like 30 hours, and she went back to her home for a year and was a basket case who could barely function. When we offered to do her for 100 to 110 hours, we brought her out and rescued her at our clinic, and Margot got well, and Margot raced Prince Harry to the South Pole.
Oh my.
And that's our hyperbaric clinic.
Wow.
That's our sign from the hyperbaric. Margot was a gem of a jewel of a girl. I adopted her as a 4th daughter. She was my 5th daughter. But anyway, that's Margot. And she became our speaker at fundraisers that raised as much as $750,000 in Denver at the Hyatt Regency. The top families would come and write us these big checks. So we were able to do 450 veterans.
Wow.
And treat and heal them, send them back. This is our Sergeant Major. everybody wants to steal him. His PTSD program that had to parallel, we had to parallel our program with PTSD because it took Margot to tell us something's wrong, something's missing. I'm getting the hyperbaric oxygen side, but there's something wrong. I'm cracking up, and we didn't realize that it was a PTSD was coming in at the same time. It had to be. So he sets up the parallel program, and everybody, including the Israelis, want to steal him. Today he's recognized as the greatest mind on hyperbaric oxygen post-traumatic stress. He's an expert at post-traumatic stress, and his program was copied by the Israelis when we sent him over there.
Huh.
Yeah, they wanted to steal him and keep him. He's a sergeant major he used to be my sergeant major when he was on active duty out at Buckley. I could count on him for just about anything. So here's our great doctor, Julie. She had to write a prescription for everybody. But you could have that book if you want.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one to follow up on there.
Okay.
I'll let you scoot back and I'll...
Sure. Anyway, I'm proud of that book. That won Book of the Year and Best Book. So I've been involved in a lot of things.
Okay. Is there anything you haven't done in life? It seems as though you've had a very...
Well, I was a cartoonist, artist, Spanish interpreter. I don't know, for some reason, I just sought interesting things. And there was nothing, I just felt there was nothing I couldn't challenge and take on that I couldn't do.
I'm trying to think now, were you one of those 4 astronauts that just went around the moon?
Now, that's one thing I would not be doing.
No?
I get claustrophobia. And
Yeah, that's a little toughie.
when I was at the Naval Academy, I said, to hell with going down in that submarine. Not me.
Not a submariner, huh? Well, we always ask our veterans to say a few words for posterity. You got any words of wisdom or personal philosophy that's kind of carried you in life?
Yeah, I find that I'm saddened by the amount of hatred that we see on the news. Trump inspired, Trump not inspired, our government in chaos, our Congress in chaos. You know, we're at sad times right now, I fear. And what's going on in Iran is not happy news. Not, what do you say, it's what, 3 times the size of Texas.
Yeah.
And we're starting to play war games. How do you control something 3 times the size of Texas? And then they've got themselves to a capability where they can create all kinds of havoc still today that I just think we should have let Iran go, but not to the point where they were going to develop a nuke. Somehow, with the Israelis' help, to find the nuke sites, neutralize it that way. But to go in and be invading right now is not very popular. I don't think it's that popular. That's my philosophy.
You know, I just don't like all the vitriol. Just everybody screaming at each other.
It's a hate. It's a time full of hate, which is not very nice. You know, when you think about it, because I thought, well, I don't know how much there is still to love about this country, but we're still a great country that does so much for so many people and cares about so many people. I think we should just devote ourselves to the hunger and to the real issues that we can do something about. We could raise crops out of this world in this country and feed the rest of the world if we had to. We have enough hell in my yard. In my yard that I had in Where's the best? Well, wherever I had. In most yards, you could grow enough good crops to feed yourself. For God's
Oh, yeah.
sake, if you really want, we could
Want
grow.
to.
We could grow crops. We have farmlands that are still untouched. We could help the world if we wanted to in a different way instead of everybody's keeping the dollars for themselves or they're playing stupid games. I just don't like the way we are taking care of the world. And we don't need a war going on in Iran either, for that matter.
Well, you've taken good care of us. That's where it starts. Just everybody being nice to somebody else.
Yeah, it doesn't cost anything to be nice and to have a friendly, mutually respectful relationship with people.
You'll never win me with your anger, but you will if you offer solutions.
Yes, yeah, yeah. How about that?
Now, you were offering solutions with guerrilla warfare.
I was trying to solve a problem.
You're
But
offering
it was-
solutions with bariatric treatments.
Yeah, that's one of my proudest things is the hyperbaric treatment. It's one of my, because I helped put that package together. In fact, Caleb Gates, our millionaire investment guy, said, "Bob, you were the godfather. You put it, you found the place, you found the money, you got the support, and you went off and I gave lectures with my friend Grady from Colorado. We gave lectures in some of the damnedest places, the Lions Club, you name the club that had let us come in and talk and take up collections. We did a lot of that when I was in Colorado, retired, went all over. So I've never been inactive. I've tried to stay very active, but then I've done a lot of writing in that time too. I've written quite a few books, and I'm kind of happy about that too.
Oh, sure.
I kept the old brain is still clicking.
That's good.
Yes, it is.
Well, you served us well by making a couple of good friends today. And
Thank you.
Colonel, I want to thank you for this interview and for your service to our country.
I can't thank you guys enough, and especially what you did for Gary.
No,